Welcome back to the ARIS tutorial. I'm going to be explaining the Scenes tab in this video. On the Scenes page, we have 3 different panels that separate the page. On the left, the first panel allows you to create objects, conversations, plaques, items, web pages, and game object factories that you can use within your scenes. In the center panel, we have the base of the scene page. You can start creating scenes on this panel. So for example, we already start out with the starting scene. If you are to click on this, on the right panel, you will see the information for the scene that you selected there. Within this middle panel, you can add and delete more scenes, allowing you to create a lengthier story and really start to organize your mobile game. Using a scene is the only way to start your game. On the right panel, when you have your first scene selected, you'll see that you can name your scene, and right underneath that you can decide if it is the intro scene or not. If it's selected as the intro scene, that means that when the game starts, it will initially start with anything that starts in this scene. Within each scene, you can add different objects that you find here on the left panel. So for example, I can add an item to the game, and right here it will say create item, so I can give it a name. And I'll name it test item 1. And then at the bottom of the create item, you have the type. So you can have a normal item, an attribute, which would be the user's attribute. So this wouldn't actually be a physical item in the game. A web item, or a hidden item, which is something that the user will never know that they actually have. If I was to create a normal item, I can change the icon for the item and the media of the item. So I will save this test item 1, and there you can see it has added the new item on the left. In my starting scene, if I wanted to add some items that were to pop up, all I have to do is click the plus arrow. From here you can add any of those items on the left. So what I'm going to do is to allow the person to inspect an item. And there you can see our test item 1. And you can also create new items and conversations and all of that stuff through this area too. So let's click test item 1. You can see that it has added test item 1, and if I click on this, it'll show the information for its trigger on the right side. So this will allow the user to view this item depending on what the trigger is. So here you have the trigger, there's a special number that ARIS gives it, and it has a lock. Let's click on a lock, and what this lock will do is it will say what the user has to have done or has to have to access this trigger. Well, in this case, it already has it set at the player has at least a number of items, and you're deciding that that number of items is 1, and you can increase or decrease that number, and you can select the type of attribute or item that you want to use in this lock. So I will click test item 1 and click save. If I click lock again, you'll see that this lock is still in place there, and we can also add more. Right underneath that, you'll see that you have a location, QR code, and sequence tabs. What this means is that this trigger item can only open depending on one of these 3 things, in addition to the lock. So for the location, if we were to choose the location, once the locks are satisfied for this trigger, then the user can officially trigger the item by a location setting. You can go ahead and move this around, or you can also open it in the locations tab at the top, and you can decide if you want this to be available anywhere, and you can see the color changes. And you can also decide if you want this to happen immediately. What that will do is if the user walks into this area, this next trigger, which is item 1, will automatically open up. And you can also have it by touch, so the user can open up their map and touch this if they are in the area, and it will open up the item. And then at the bottom we also have the choice to set an icon for this. In addition to location, you can also set a QR code. ARIS will automatically create a QR code for you and give it a number. You can change this number by typing in something else, such as test item 1, or anything that you want it to be, and it will change the QR code for you. Once you've decided on a QR code and a name, you can go ahead and right-click the QR code and save the image. The best way to deal with the QR code is after you have saved the image is to print it out and have it somewhere within your GPS locations the user can find. And once they are in the correct scene the QR code is in, and they have satisfied all the locks, they'll be able to scan the QR code and start the trigger. The last one that we have is sequence, and this means that it will be triggered as soon as all the locks are satisfied. After you're done setting your trigger, make sure that you click save. Now let's talk about adding more scenes and connecting them. We have the starting scene here, but if you wanted to add more scenes for organization purposes, you can click add scene. Let's label this scene 2. If you have two separate scenes, the important thing to know is that this scene will not connect to scene 2 unless you tell it to. Once we've finished everything in the starting scene, if you wanted to connect to scene 2, what you'll have to do is click the plus button and then click switch scene. And we'll decide that it connects to scene 2. If you click that trigger, it will open up on the right side, and you'll see that it also has the same type of locks as it did for the test item, and it will always be set as a sequence. So once you've created your locks, you can click save, and once the locks are completed, this scene will automatically go to scene 2. Like I said, these scenes are not connected. If you have conversations that are triggered in the starting scene, they will only happen in the starting scene, and conversations in scene 2 are similar. They will only happen in scene 2. That's it for this video. Make sure to watch our next videos to learn more about ARIS.